Overwatch League. So
Okay,
I can see that.
why don't we move on to the next bullet point, which is that there's a job opening right now at Blizzard that has a lot to do with just competitive Overwatch. And this is reported by Dot Esports here. They're hiring an esports observer to help improve Overwatch's spectator experience. And just to kind of give you some of the responsibilities, you can kind of see what they are here. But I think some of these things are things we've been talking about. Things like spectator and produce content, work with the team, obviously, to figure out what kind of tools will help with it. I think one interesting thing here is evangelize best observing practices to internal and external partners too. So they're looking for somebody to kind of fill in all these roles. I feel like this should be 3 people, but maybe they're just having one post for a lot of positions. I kind of preface this, like at least in our notes, as probably the most or one of the most important jobs right now to find for Blizzard, and is the spectating, because I've said even last week that I feel like the product, we still have a long ways to go with the product, and I want to get your sense, especially you, ZP, because you've done some spectating too. Like, how far away do you think we are from the actual optimal, or just at least a bare minimum, from the standpoint of quality to be launched in a big huge league from a spectating standpoint?
okay, well, let's go back a moment and take a look at how traditional sports handle their production, where you take a look at a Turner Esports, or not esports, rather Turner Sports, for example. You have your production guy that is always there. You have your camera guys that are always there. And you have all these people working together as a cohesive unit for many, many games over the course of every season. And you don't split them up for whatever reason, for random pay reasons or otherwise. You don't have a case where ABC is randomly going to go, actually, we want to grab cameraman 2 and 4 from Turner, but we're not getting your producer. Like, no, you have cohesive teams that develop here. You don't get the stuff what you see in esports, where you'll have one event they'll go, we'll bring on some observers, but we'll only bring on just one guy. Or you have another event, they'll go, actually, we're just going to go with all our own people. Or another event, they'll go, we'll get maybe 3 out of the 6.
Sure.
You have a lot of instability in the observing scene right now, because unfortunately, when it comes to budgets in some of the events that have been going on, not only do you have cases where casters don't necessarily get what they're looking for, but casters have a gem deal compared to what happens with observers, where many events don't necessarily see the importance of bringing out really good observers, or if they do, there's just, it comes down to budgetary reasons, right? Where you can't afford to bring out everything. And the first thing that gets chopped is observing. And that's unfortunate, because observing is incredibly important to the Overwatch experience. You need to have very good observing to connect with the viewer and let them see what's going on. If the observing quality isn't there, well, it affects the entire product. Yep. So going forward right now to the Blizzard announcement is that I feel like the ideal thing for Blizzard here is that you do get someone in the spot that has a cohesive vision for observing. And then you put together observer teams where, as part of the licensing agreements for tournaments, you kind of go, look, actually, if you're going to run an Overwatch tournament, you do need to bring out this cohesive observing team. You can't just go piecemeal where you have the casters do observing, or you find ways of cutting corners. You need to make it imperative that you get a well-trained observer crew that gets good practice, because I know a lot of the people that did Overwatch World Cup observing, and a lot of them got to do MLG Vegas. They haven't really had anything to do over the last 5 months, because due to the nature of online tournaments and production, you can't. A few of them have been able to do stuff, but it's been very minimal in opportunities.
Right.
If you want good observing, you have to give these people consistent work and consistent practice.
So, Pure, I'll throw the same question to you. Do you think the current quality of the spectating is far away from what we need to get it to for an Overwatch League, or do you think it's already in a state where we could launch a huge league and try to push all these deals and maybe TV deals and things like that?
Well, the interesting thing is that with Carbon, was I know ZP and Hexagrams went out to Denver for Carbon, and I know the organization that I was talking with about being an analyst or a caster, I don't remember what it was nowadays or anymore, they wanted me to come out there 2-3 months before their event. So right now we have Doa and Mani at Blizzard working on the production side of things. So your question, how long will it take? Are we far away? I can tell you that we're far away, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Blizzard won't pick up the pace on improving it. And the thing that ZP said, which is it really hits the heart of it, is that you need consistent tournaments, or you need consistent practice to tailor it, because it's a job. You can't just show up and be the best all the time.
It's a skill.
You're working at it. Yeah, it's, you know, it's, you have a knife, you need to sharpen it. You just can't just go cut some tomatoes with a dull knife. So it's a tough situation. We have all these chicken before the egg scenarios, and I personally feel that it will be okay. Minimum viable product. I feel that when the stream starts, you're going to have 8 observers in the server, whatever you want to call it. You're going to have a TD. You're going to have production staff. You're going to have 4 or 5 cameras. Maybe not 4 or 5 cameras, but you're going to have everyone in place. And hopefully before Owl, if we're calling it Owl, before Owl.
I really
That's
feel
what
like
Flames
it
call
should
it
be
in,
called
man. It's
Owl.
like
Like, I
starting
understand it's a word, but just, you know, how long until we get to the photoshops of owls, like just being over like.
I wasn't sure if it was a meme yet or not. So before OWL, but hopefully before OWL, you'll have some sizable tournaments, some consistent action, and hopefully that'll provide the OWL's Blizzard scenario or situation with some really good content and staff. And I know that Monty and Doa will probably be the main casters, I assume, but it'll be nice to have a consistent staff of casters and analysts who know what they're talking about, who are able to engage the audience. And then when we're actually seeing stuff happen, because I don't really watch games all the time, but when I turned on a game yesterday, I was watching Apex this morning, and I just turned the game on, and I didn't know what was going on. It took me like still 12 seconds to figure out, okay, this is what's going on there. This is what's going on with the old situation, because it takes you some time because you don't know what skills are being used. So if you turn on the stream and you know they already used their pin and they already used their hook, you'd be like, oh wait, are they able to push them right now? Okay, here comes the push. Stuff like that. So maybe we'll never see the skills actually on the screen. But to answer your question directly, I have faith that when OWL the stream starts, the quality is going to be really, really good, and there will definitely be some huge issues.
I don't have any. I'm definitely confident that everything around the actual game will be tip top perfect, just super awesome. That we even saw the beginnings of, you know, with E-League and things like that. I'm not worried about that at all. That's completely covered by them. I'm just still, you know, talking about the game itself. And, you know, you brought up Apex this morning. I freaking watched Apex, or at least I watched the VODs for Apex, and I loved watching this series. I thought the series were awesome. We were just going to maybe touch on it later. But, you know, I put my just regular spectator hat on, and I'm just like, man, this is hard to watch. Like, this is very difficult when you're watching Effects Tracer and you're watching, you know, almost every character they show was like shaky and jittery, and is like really, really tough on an average spectator. And we have to figure out those things. We have to figure out ways to alleviate that a bit.
There's a lot of different theories on how best to do observing, and I'm not saying any theory is particularly correct or incorrect. I still, like, just so people know, as far as it goes, I still think there's a very open debate as to what is the best way to observe Overwatch. How much do you try to catch in the moment versus how much do you do on replays? My philosophy, which is hardly the definitive philosophy, please don't say like, yeah, this is the way to go about it. This is just my usual take on it, is that I do think for the viewer, it's usually better to just pick one particular viewpoint and ride that and let the casters tell a story and narrative over it, versus constantly trying to switch. And there's some tournaments, I'm not going to like name one tournament one specific day or anything like that, but there's definitely been tournaments in Overwatch where you see the observers kind of go crazy and try and go, we got to catch everything. And if you try and catch everything, you catch nothing, because from the viewer perspective, you're not able to follow a narrative.
I understand that.
I think there's something to be said for whatever the general viewpoint is for Overwatch and how the camera works, is that I would almost suggest a rule along the lines of just limiting how many times you swap the camera per fight. Because there are some times in tournaments where you'll see the camera just swapping repeatedly over and over again from one perspective to another, and you get maybe 6 different perspectives in a 25-second fight. That is incredibly confusing. I think that's, if I had to narrow down one thing that should be changed, is that you really should almost have a cooldown on how often you swap the camera, even if it means that you're missing something, because then you have a replay squad that could come in, right? Or maybe you don't catch the Dragon Blade that comes in because you're following the perspective of someone else. But then you come in the downtime and go, by the way, this is a replay of what happened. And you go from there. And then in the future you go, maybe let's try and have more foresight and realize that Dragon Blade is coming up that we don't want to miss.
Agree. Flame, what do you think, man?
I mean, I'm like a little biased because I spent so much time working on UIs in TF2, but I think that I don't want to say it's programmatic, but I think that you could automate a lot of it, at least to help like a backup plan kind of thing. Because the way I view the game, or the way like when I'm watching it, I generally have like every fight there's like maybe like one or two people that like really have to have a good team fight for the attacking team to win. So like in my eyes, I think that most of the game should be viewed as offense versus defense, as opposed to like red versus blue, if that makes sense. It should be viewed as like, okay, defense set up this obstacle and you have to overcome it. And we're going to watch offense and how they're going to approach this defense. And we're going to check out the offensive players most of the time and like take the game one half at a time, where like the first half you're focused on the one team's offense and you switch to the next. And I think every fight, there's generally like, what ults are up, what ults aren't up. And there's probably like a way to start saying, okay, I know that this tac visor has to go well, or I know that this graviton has to go well. And like, that's their win condition. And you just keep focusing on those win conditions, and then it'll help you create storylines. And then like what went wrong for the push, what went right for the defense or whatever. And I think that like, there's ways to do that are very, I don't know what the word is. Like you could very easily write a bot almost to do it.
Spoken like an engineer, man.
Yeah. So like, I mean, that's how I view the game, and like it might be wrong, but I know what you mean. To what ZP's saying, like I was watching Apex last week, and I got like irrationally mad watching VODs because it kept switching between like Tracer Genji, different color, and like if you're on the red team, the UI still has blue text on it, and like And like when you get a kill, sometimes the person who gets the kill flickers between red and blue, and it's like really, really overwhelming to me as someone who like, I mean, we came from TF2, right? Like it was the blue team versus the red team, and all the skins were blue, all the skins were red, and it was like kind of straightforward in that regard. But when you start mixing and matching, you start really getting confused, like which tracer's which. The skins don't match, or the skins are matching now because there's no skins in the lobby, but maybe the skin is still like subtly blue in some way on the red team. I don't know. Like there's a lot of different things in that regard that I want to fix, or would like love to help fix. But from a spectating perspective, I think we should generally be watching like the offensive players, who needs to come up big, and then start talking about like, did they come big or why didn't they? But I don't know. I don't think it's as intricate as people are making it sound. I mean, I know Dota maybe only has like 2 or 3 people. I don't know how much CS has 2 or 3 people, but the fact that people are like throwing in 8 is like kind of crazy to me.
Well, I mean, Overwatch as a spectator, like from a spectator standpoint, is going to be much more complex, I think, than those other 2 games you mentioned. So, I mean, the problem is a bigger issue with Overwatch, and programmatically, I think you're right. I think there is a lot of data that you could be recording and figure out trends and patterns, right? Especially with the pro Overwatch. And we see some analytics right now with sites. Some, like Captain Planet does some of these things, but you could go even further and write, certain, it's not gonna be scripts. You can just like program it directly into the game and figure out, where the camera should be going and maybe figure out something like that. Maybe they will do that just to at least try to figure out some best practices and things like that. But I was talking to Brad last night, and I think that, spectating and camera work, it's an art, it's a skill. It's something that takes a lot of time to do, and it should require as much work as some of these players put in to playing. Like they should, all the camera people,
100%.
They should know each of the teams. They should know what the trends of all those players do, and then from there, kind of go with what ZP's doing. Pick what's going to be the most reasonable and optimal things to look at, going into this map. And this is what normally happens on this map. This character goes crazy.
Well, the one thing I'll say about observing too is that there are some potential tech solutions that could be really, really cool that would make things way easier on the observers. Like my wish list on the number 1 for me for observing would just be to have a hidden kill feed that is 15 seconds into the future. So for the observers, if you see that a Reaper just gets a quad kill 15 seconds from now, you know that you can actually look at the Reaper as he's setting up. The casters can set a narrative, and then they can have a big climax when the Reaper goes in and kills an entire team. So that sort of stuff, if even that comes in at some point, would make things so much better to observe. And it's not just about the personnel that you get there as much as we talked about, but just tech stuff coming in eventually, which almost certainly will be improved as time goes on, it's a priority. I think it'll make the game look way better, and people will probably at some point look back at old tournaments and go, wow, we didn't have these things and it was pretty rough. But into the future, a year, 2 years from now, they'll go, things look really cool now. And, perhaps we shouldn't have fretted too much about it back in the day.
I wanna just speak against the cheat feed for a second, because I've had this discussion before in other games.
Okay.
Really?
You don't like it.
So like one of the problems with it, and this conversation came up in TF2, it came up in CS even, is that it becomes too predictable. And like the viewer knows, okay, the Reaper's gonna pop off now. And like you have to start adding like really weird, subtle flukes into it to like you want to see the pulse bombs that miss. You want to miss, like, you know what I mean? Like if you only have really good plays, it starts making like the viewers bored in some way, and like you lose a lot of your chat memes. I mean, it sounds dumb, but it's true. Like you want the missed pulse bombs, you want the bad tac visors, you want like the barrage into the wall. Like it's like it adds to the show in some weird way, but there's a lot of discussion to happen there in terms of like.
I still think you'll get that though, even if you have the advanced knowledge that stuff is going to happen. You're not every fight is going to have the 4-kill, just amazing pop-off moment. But if you did have that information coming to you a little bit earlier, you would make sure you never missed it. Because as much as what you're saying is true, that you do want to see more flukes and misplays, I would find it difficult to craft an argument saying that you don't want to see the perspective of the player who just got 4 to 5 kills, or at least a good vantage point of it. Like missing that moment, I don't think should happen. And if you can create a tech innovation that stops you from missing that moment, I feel like it's hard to argue against that.
Well, it's kind of like, I'll argue that with just even what Pure was saying, which was, if you miss a big play like that, you can always go back and show a highlight of that. When it's just say one team's wiped, right? We're just waiting for them to respawn. You could show a quick highlight of that and kind of look through that. Where you're not going to show a highlight of somebody missing a pulse bomb or something like that. That doesn't make as much sense. So to your, ZP, I agree that it should be shown, but at least there's an alternative for huge plays like that to be shown versus.
It'd definitely be a tool that's on staff to have a cheat feed. But the point that Matt brings up is that's something you would run into. It'd be like the first tournament, we have a cheat feed, and then you're always setting up the plays for the viewer. Then you'd be like, hey guys, it doesn't really work that we're always just telling the viewer ahead of time what's happening. I honestly think that a Blizzard should look into having a player within the production staff. Because a player, when they're looking at the compositions, when they're looking how people are setting up, and there's not many casters, like ZP has like gone through the ringer, like there's not many casters that I would say actually know what's going on and look at the compositions and have a general idea of what's going to be happening. There are great casters who are really good at casting, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're painting a really good picture. So
there should be an extra bullet. There should be an extra bullet point that says pro player experience. Is that what you're saying, Brad?
Oh, is that
no, he's not wrong. Is the
no,
thing.
I don't think he's wrong either.
It's like he's right. It's a weird balance where like I know I'd be really good at picking who to watch.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
And like but like I don't want to be an observer, but like someone like you need someone that's like gonna fit that bill.
Sometimes it's a storyline that you want to catch there too, where it's sort of a situation where one team has 3 ultimates, the other team has just 1, and of the 3 ultimates you have a nano boost and a dragon blade. From a casting perspective, going into that fight, before it even goes in, I'm going to be setting it up and going, and here comes player X, has a dragon blade on the ready, nano boost will be supporting him. This is the last attempt they're going to get. They're down to 30 seconds. It is up to this player to make this play happen. Now, sometimes you can win the fight with that player completely messing up, but you take a look at all the facts you have going into it. You absolutely want the camera on that Genji in that moment because all the resources are in his favor. The other team doesn't have a whole lot to stop him in that scenario, and it's a must-win fight. So you can very easily craft the narrative that this Genji needs to sink or swim. Let's see what he does. And then you either have a great moment where Eddie does what he needs to do, or you have a terrible moment of, and he got booped by Lucio into the pit with his Dragon Blade Nano Boost. What a great play by Lucio. Like either way, you have storylines that weave themselves if you can set things up ahead of time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. I mean, if you occasionally get to watch an Ana sleep a nano blading Genji, and I think through the course of a cast, you're going to have the POV on the Genji going in and swiping, and then occasionally maybe it's the end of King's Row where it really matters that they stop the Genji and they don't have a trank, they don't have a sound barrier. I would put the cam on the Ana for at least the moment where you get to see her sleep or not sleep the target, and then you throw it right back onto the Genji who kills the Ana and then like continues with the kill reset. Yeah, I think we're all.
I want some.
Like, I think we're all in agreement too. It's. Oh, go ahead, Flame.
I want like if I know a nano boost is coming, like this, and this is like stupid camera tech, but like I want the game to somehow like simulate me becoming the nano boost, where like it starts off at the Ana, and then like Ana shoots it, and then like the camera just zooms into the POV of the person that got nano boosted.
Kind of like,
and like stuff like that can make the game really cool to watch, but I don't think we're there yet.
Even built into the algorithm is, okay, they're about to use Nano Blade. Is there a trank? Is there a sound barrier to happen there? If there's no trank or sound barrier, you have to see the sleep. But if there is a trank, you're going to assume, oh, they're going to hit the trank here, so we don't need to watch the Zenyatta. But we need, once they hit the trank, what's the secondary set of ults that have to be used to win the fight,
exactly. And
yeah,
there's a lot you can.
And I mean, just to piggyback on that too, is just creating a brand new way to look at Overwatch 2 should be on the table. It doesn't
slow motion bullet cam.
Sure, well, okay, that's a little bit. Maybe that's a little.
I'm just saying, like, that's like
it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be the same experience.
Like, look, I would absolutely love to have a follow the projectile cam for gravitons at points where maybe not as the main cam, but as a replay camera, that would be one of the coolest things possible to see someone lob a graviton all the way across the field just to see it get eaten by the waiting maw of a diva. That would be an incredible replay cam that not the people watching would be very entertained by. Just, it would be good. I mean, the casters themselves would have a lot to work with. So there are some actually cool auxiliary camera work options that could be experimented with, but it is worth knowing that all of that is sort of the final dressing, right? The cherry on top when you're still looking at how to bake the total cake.
I'm just talking about generally, though. Generally, the concept of we can show Overwatch in a way that's not what it looks like to players that actually play the game, and just really diving into that, and we're just think of it as a, that we're trying to display this to the audience, and it doesn't have to be what the game, the proper game looks like. It can be just whatever product we want to make it, and whatever is going to be best to making this the most entertaining viewing experience possible. And that philosophy. And they can dive super deep into that if they want. It'll take a lot of time, I think, to really get it to a place where, you can do some great things. And I don't think it'll start that way. I think it will start closer to, what we see right now, just with some additional tools that can help out spectator folks. But I would love to, them to go down that deep into it and figure out, something amazing like that.
And all right, so I'm gonna go off on this too. I had a
last point. We gotta move on.
I had a professor at Rutgers, and she was actually the person who created the technology that puts the yellow line on the football fields during NFL broadcasts.
Oh yeah, like the first down.
And if you have enough cameras at the same time, you can do a lot of really cool 360 VR kind of stuff. I guess rotate around it, and stuff like that will definitely make the game more if you play the games with the slow motion scatter arrows or something, or some weird multi-angle death on earth shatter. You can do a lot of really cool stuff with that, I think.
Yeah. Hopefully not a fluorescent hockey puck, right?
Oh gosh,
whatever that was.
I mean, I go to hockey games. I don't know what I'm looking at most of the time.
You're just drinking beer.
I don't know where the puck is, but they're chasing that.
Right. All right. Well, why don't we move on and let's talk a little bit about maybe some events that are going on. So we've got the Overwatch Monthly Melee that's going to be happening this weekend. The groups were recently announced, and ZP, you're going to be casting that, right?
Yep, I'm going to be there.
Flame, are you going to be doing it too?
Flame is invited. He hasn't said otherwise, so I assume Flame would be there. Flame's going to be there. Slasher's going to be there.
OMM.
Yeah, so right now, as far as I know, it was going to be Uber and JCap, but JCap had something come up, so he's not going to be there. Thus far, casting-wise, it is at least going to be me, Uber, and Hex, with Flame and Slasher doing analysis. And
Slasher's back. Cool.
Yeah, Slasher is back. He had just real-life stuff come up for last month. He was not replaced or whatever. Right. This is what I'm telling you, man. People just jump to conclusions. Just actually, so I mean, it's one of those things where people look, they go, Slasher's not here. ZP was eating pineapple and had an allergic reaction and therefore banished Slasher from the month. It's like, no, none of that happened. Slasher is going to be back, and he's been there with us for basically every monthly Melee, so why wouldn't you have him there, especially this upcoming month?
Okay, yeah, great. So definitely go check it out, guys. It's going to be the last one, at least, for the foreseeable future. So, everybody's been a fan.
Who the qualifying teams are, so we can get some.
Let's bring that up too.
Oh no, I don't mean the groups. I want to know who the qualifier teams are. We need some drama or something, some hype. NRG's in it, isn't it?
Let me look in here. NRG is going to be one of the qualifying teams. That much is absolutely true.
I don't want to get in trouble right now, but it'd be nice to hear.
No, NRG announced. I'm not in trouble. Like I'm not in trouble for announcing any of this. So I think right now this is not 100% locked in, but the qualifying teams will be EG, Tempo Storm, You Guys Get Paid, Rise, RNG, NRG, and God help us if they play against each other because, well, very similar. You just changed 2 letters, man.
Right.
Kangarna is going to be the last team where we weren't sure if we could get them in, but assuming they accept, they would be in. And I assume that is what Brad was driving at.
No, I know that one of our players is playing for NRG, so I wanted to see if they were qualifying.
Okay.
And they will be one of the qualifying
teams.
Are.
Yep, they are one of the qualifying teams. So we'll be definitely talking about that next week. Tune in, check that out. Another thing that's going on right now, obviously, is the World Cup, and some teams like the U.S. are doing some tryouts. A little bit of, little bit of controversy yesterday about whether they were going to show it or not, like having public tryouts or not. And in the end, they didn't end up having public tryouts, which was kind of a bummer because I don't know. I kind of wanted to watch it and just have more of this selection process be more open to the community and just kind of bring in the community a little bit. I like that type of thing going on instead of having complete closed doors and then just boom, group stages. That's just the next time we see it. Any thoughts on why not to have public tryouts?
So I'm sure everyone's going to have thoughts to contribute here. I mean, it is a divisive issue. And let me just say here before I go in on my own thoughts that I fully respect the people, like all sides of the argument. You can make good arguments on all sides. That being said, for me, if I were on the committee, aside from the part where it was a campaign promise and my hands were tied, I am still more in favor of the public tryouts here. And the reason is that if you're making the argument that it's going to significantly weaken the U.S. team by doing public tryouts where you don't even have your final team yet, but you're just in the tryouts phase. And you're going to make the argument that the team is going to be worse and potentially lose because of streaming it. I would argue that, unfortunately, we didn't have a very strong team anyways, if something like that would be the breaking point in the team doing well or not. I think that the tryout phase is early enough that you can stream that, you can make a community event, and you can build a lot of positive groundswell support for it. Because the thing for me in the Overwatch World Cup is that it is a competitive tournament, but I also think it's a great bridge to the more casual side of the community to really be a bigger tent and invite more people in to watch competitive Overwatch. And I do think there's a lot of really cool things you could have done in the team building process to really entertain people, let them get to know these competitive players that maybe they don't know because they don't watch the competitive scene right now, but they're interested because of the World Cup. And I do think there's a little bit of an opportunity lost here. I understand why players and coaches would not necessarily want it to be streamed because players can get a little bit outrageous on comms when there's not a microphone running and all the rest. But I do think the good would have outweighed the bad here.
Sure.
For streaming it.
Yeah. Flame, what do you think? Open tryouts or not?
Well, I guess forget the open tryouts thing, right? It's irrelevant at this point.
Yeah, it's true.
But I guess logistically, I understand why you wouldn't want to stream it. I mean, it's risky. Like at the end of the day, it's risky because I don't know what the word is. Like if you're Kyle and Jason and Stir, like you don't want Twitch chat or Reddit like talking about how the tryouts went or who did well or whether or not there was bias in the picks and like all this stuff that like makes a big difference. I think like if you see someone's having a pretty good tryout from a perspective of Twitch chat and you're like, oh, that guy's popping off, look at all these great tech visors, but then maybe at the end of the day they're just like not the teammate that the other 5 players want to play with or something, then it comes into like, there's a lot of discussion there that can happen. And I don't think it's healthy, and at least for the people on the committee or the players at the end of the day.
Yeah.
If you have like a bunch of bandwagoners saying like, oh, you guys didn't pick up Grim, but you picked up Retzi. Well, like we watched Retzi suck in tryouts. Like, why'd you pick up, like you don't want stuff like that happening.
That would absolutely happen too.
Yeah, no, it
could happen, but I also think
happen.
I also think that if you're making your decisions off good logic, there's no reason why you can't make a vlog and go, well, guys, we had this close trout between Grim Reality and Retzi, and what we ended up finding out at the very end is that there were a few moments where, you take a look at, maybe it looked like Retzi had a bad game, but we looked at these other factors that were going in, and we found out that Retzi can practice 4 times as much as Grim Reality going in, and we have factors X, Y, and Z, and that's why it was very close, but we're putting him on the team over Grim Reality. I feel like,
Sure,
whatever, I'm just making up a hypothetical here, but I do feel like you could have justified those decisions without a whole lot of just crazy, just what are you doing? How dare you coming in from Reddit? I don't know.
It's just, it is more pressure. It's more stuff you have to do. Like, yeah, you could do that, ZP, and it would alleviate the situation, but you would have to do that, where in this other scenario where nobody sees anything, it's less maintenance too, even from a PR standpoint. So
you guys are breaking it down, which is nice, but I personally feel 100% do not stream the scrims, tryouts.
Easy as that.
If you care about winning doesn't care about your hype. Winning doesn't care about the popularity. Winning cares about winning. And if the mentality behind Kyle and Jason and Stir and like some of the key elements of that team care about winning more so than how they look when they're playing, you don't stream your scrims. Like, if you stream your scrims, any good player, any good analyst is going to watch it, listen to who the main callers are, think about how aggressive they are with their calling, and so on and so forth. So,
but you don't even have the final team there, Pure, and we're also talking about something that's going on for months and months and months. Are you telling me that streamed parts of something where you're not even dealing with the final US team because you're still mixing and matching everything around is really going to provide a tangible competitive advantage to South Korea in November? I feel like that's a bit of a stretch.
The valid point, but I don't agree with streaming based on that logic. I still wouldn't do it. I don't. If I was in control of that, I wouldn't let any player, just because you're saying that, like, okay, Twitch chat says Retzi is better than Grim. Why did they do that? Oh, we'll do a podcast and we'll talk about it. You're not taking into account like the psychology and how the players react to how certain things affect them. Certain players react differently to Twitch chat, to certain people like back channeling, direct messaging. If you have no access, you're limiting that to essentially zero. Like the players will talk to each other, but the way that it is in the community right now, we have like inner circles where the players don't talk shit about the other players because they respect them and they know that they're good. But anyone who's on the outside has no clue who actually is good or why they're good and who sets each other up. So you're making a valid point that it's very limited, but I would still not do it 100%.
Let's just turn the question around. Like, what is there to gain from showing it?
Showing what, the scrims?
Yeah, just to show the scrims. Yeah.
Get popularity, get people behind certain players, grow people's Twitters, get figure out who's going to start being a part of the team, who's really gelling, and be like, oh, I saw this guy in the tryout. He's playing really, really well. I'm excited for North America. They destroyed Denmark, or they destroyed whoever they're practicing against. So.
Right.
Well, for me, I would say the benefits would be transparency, in that you're letting people know that it was a fair process where human beings are flawed, right? Where people come in with their own biases and their own reasonings for why they'd want to pick person A over person B. For me, when I came on my platform, I was just sort of like, here's how I'd want to do it. Part of it was just to ensure that people think that, not think, but know that there is transparency and some degree of fairness going in. Like, to give an example of the player I go way back with, I think Cool Matt is an excellent player. I think Cool Matt has a pretty good chance of getting onto a Team USA even now. However, if it's behind closed doors and I just say, actually, Cool Matt was the best person in tryouts and put it on the team, there's almost a part there where I feel like I have to answer questions going, well, yeah, I go way back with Cool Matt, but he did really well. There's something to be said where if you have some of this stuff more on the open, it does work to allay concerns that the committee members themselves might be biased. But that's just a small part of it. The bigger part is the idea that I just see the World Cup as a really big opportunity to bridge different parts of the Overwatch player base. So the more you can get people invested into the different teams and make it a public thing, like for example, Jason's thread on our Overwatch subreddit, which at times can be difficult to get competitive things on that subreddit, it was getting some real traction there going, guys, look, Team USA is trying out. People were interested in it before it went down. So for me, it's more about the bridge to get more people involved in Overwatch esports. I think is a really cool opportunity. And yeah, if you want to be complete min-max, maybe you can envision scenarios where it hurts a team down the line, but I just don't think that showing the team building process, not even the final team, is going to be just a crazy competitive disadvantage. But
don't you think the process, the way the World Cup's going to work with, like, correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to be qualifying online and then going to LAN events in regions to qualify for the main event in Irvine? Am I right?
I think it's the other way. I think they just go straight to LAN for groups. I think it's the way the announcement
there's no
was
qualifiers.
written. There's no online portion period. Everyone is, if you are on a team.
Yeah, they're in a group right now.
Yeah, if you're on a team right now, you're guaranteed to go to a live in-person event where you get to compete against another team.
What I mean is, right now, just tell me where the teams are right now. They choose their 6 players on Team USA. Do they have to compete in a regional tournament, or are they just going to Irvine?
No. There's 4 different sites.
It's in Irvine, though, for the sake of argument.
Yeah. Okay, so there's 4 different regional sites. There's 4 different regional sites where 2 groups of 4 will be battling it out. And then the top 2 teams from each of the regions then go to BlizzCon, which is in Irvine. It's just kind of confusing because one of the sites of the regions is Irvine too. But that's how it works. The 2 top finishers from the regions go to BlizzCon. The top 8 compete there.
Well, don't you think that's going to be like enough in terms of hype, or do you think that like the slow progression of allowing access? I guess it just makes sense in its own right. So
I mean, it could play for a bigger story. You know, like if the right team that's been followed ends up making it super deep into BlizzCon, it's a crazy great story.
Sure.
Oh, there is one other reason for the streaming stuff, and just him talking in chat reminded me of it, is that I also think in the streaming stuff where obviously there's back and forth on who would get involved, I do feel like one of the better projectile players in the US still is Seagull. And I feel like at least getting him involved in that process of going, hey, actually, you can stream some of this, it would have been nice synergy. I would have made sure that he was the best player for the spot before putting him on, which is why I wanted tryouts for stuff like that. But I do feel like the way the Team USA stuff has been kind of set up is that it does kind of exclude him from the beginning, where
he didn't want to do it anyways. It doesn't matter, right? He didn't want to.
I think it's
participate in it anyways.
I don't think that's true.
So I'll go into 2. I actually don't even really mind the idea of streaming scrims as long as comms aren't on. Like if I were in the match watching, or if I was in the server just watching like from like overhead with comms muted or something, like I think that's like completely fine content in my opinion, at least in the context of World Cup. But tryout process is like so damned if you do, damned if you don't. I don't really think that there was any win, because like to what Brad's saying too is like there is a lot of mentality there, and there is a lot of like, oh, I watched this tryout back and I clearly did fine. There was like bias here and stuff, but like there's always gonna be bias, and I don't think any other country is even like having this discussion. I mean, I don't know if I haven't seen like a Canada thread, like where's Canada's tryouts or where's Korea's tryouts.
Well,
I think
Jason
Thailand had a thread maybe, but like,
I mean, it's because it just became more public because of a tweet and things going on there.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I don't see any discussion about Korea's streamed tryouts or whatever. It's just like you have to make the decision. Like, I don't think it brings exposure to anybody but the parties involved that are streaming it. I think like like Overwatch World Cup is going to bring viewers. I think people like, I also get mad at people who say things like, oh, we really want streamers on the committee or whatever because they'll bring exposure, but like nobody is not watching World Cup. Like
why is
everybody
our job to like bring exposure to this too? Or isn't this supposed to be like a winning event? Aren't we supposed to win this?
I think winning the event brings ultimately a huge amount of exposure too, but it's one of those things where you hedge a little bit, right? I mean, you can still get some exposure out of it even if you don't win, that sort of thing.
This is about competition, isn't it? I know it's a balance. I'm just being like kind of like edgy here.
It's
the point winning, not like doing a job that like, okay, so
if you could do both, then you would
agreed.
do both.
I mean, I agree.
Yeah, but
it's
in the end,
in my opinion, it's about winning, but
yeah.
Obviously, some people have different.
It should be about winning, and I know JCap like would have streamed it, and then people would have watched, and he would have had 700 viewers, and he would have gotten new followers, and it would have been nice. But win, like make a team that's supposed to go over there and just like destroy Korea or whoever the top 3 teams will be, Spain, whatever, like win.
Okay. And just for clarity, like when I said that Siegel didn't want to do it, by the way, I meant that, he even publicly said that if this is going to require a lot of time practicing and things, that he doesn't, it was going to impede on his streaming. So it's not like he didn't want to be part of Team USA. It's just the time wise, it was going to be hard for him. So just want to make sure people understand when I said that. So yeah, overall, I think winning is number one. That's what I want to see. I just want to see the team win in the end. But just definitely an interesting discussion to have. Just to finish out kind of events, Rivalcade was announced. So Rivalcade Rumble is going to be back on the 27th and 28th. 8 teams announced, invited, and then there's going to be a total of 16. We'll be talking about that in the coming weeks, so I don't want to spend too much on that. But, really happy about that, especially when we had this discussion that no more, endemic type of events will be happening. We're still seeing a lot of these events still being scheduled for the summer. And then something kind of interesting that we never talk about, which is console Overwatch. And recently the Overguard was announced, or the Overguard announced that they're starting 2 leagues. And for those of you not familiar with the Overguard, it's an organization that has a lot to do with the console space. They're going to be, I think, helping organize. I'm not sure if they're the umbrella company on these leagues, but they're going to be creating or helping facilitate a PS4 league as well as an Xbox One league or Xbox League for Overwatch. So that's interesting. I mean, this is like the first divergence we've seen in esports where it's platform divergence. So one of the big announcements they had was that Golden Boys joined the staff, and we all know Golden Boy is huge in the console arenas, so that's a pretty big hire for them. I don't know, just any quick thoughts on just console Overwatch and it being separate from PC Overwatch?
Well, first off, let me talk to you about my boy, Alex Golden Boy Mendez. He is a global icon and a national treasure. So let's just get that out of the way to begin with. But no, Alex is a great guy, and it's cool to see him sort of get in and give more publicity to the console scene, which is a scene, despite the fact that a lot of people do focus on the PC side of things. So I just think it's a cool project, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do we have any numbers on console players and any console competitions? Because one of the coaches that was trialing for us, he was basically saying that the console scene is dead when compared to PC. So that doesn't necessarily mean the console is dead in numbers, but that's something I'd like to see, and or with the announcement of these events happening, if that'll kind of pump up the scene a little bit to have something to play in. Because I guess prior to this, there was nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we don't have the numbers.
I know that's the thing. I've been trying to get, one of the things that I was wanting, at least for just the podcast that I do, is just to have a console correspondent, that we could just come and get an update from every once in a while from the console space. It's so hard to find somebody. I outside of just a lot of people that play casually and or that are players from that standpoint, it's hard to find somebody that's an actual expert in the console space.
Well, because the question is, why would you choose console over PC if you were gonna go hard in esports?
Less competition.
As a gamer maybe, but from a analyst or caster or personality standpoint, I think you'd be hurting yourself.
So I think players have already transitioned over. There's so many people that I run into that were, my season 1 or season 2, I was coming over from console. Yeah. And now I'm a PC player, a one-trick 76 at rank 4100. But I don't know.
So this could be a little niche, that's within the Overwatch space. But I think it's kind of cool that they're starting that, and they'll help develop it a bit. Obviously, OWL, I don't think will have anything to do with the console space, at least maybe for a long time. But very cool anyways. Let's see. Lastly from the event standpoint, Apex happened. What Apex did you watch the last Rogue matches? I don't want to talk about Apex too much if a bunch of us didn't watch Apex, especially this morning, because did you guys watch the Rogue versus KDP?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we talk about that? This was Rogue's second match in season 3. Them winning the first one, of course. So this was if they win, they advance type of game. And spoilers for those of you who didn't watch, give you 2 seconds. Spoilers, Rogue ended up losing to KDP 3-1 here, and a lot of the games were super close. And
yeah, definitely.
I feel like it's safe to say that they should have won. Like, I know Flame, like I feel like every time we review, Apex matches, like you always say that these teams should have won because they should have done something better. But this one I felt like was even another level where it's like, man, they had it. They had they had certain games like right there, and they just, I think lost in very key moments that they had advantages in. So I kind of want to get y'all's opinions on it, and start with you, Flame. Like, what'd you think?
I mean, KDP, I think last season people were talking about Uncia for so long for some reason, and I felt like Kung Du Panthera was like the better of the two always, and I thought that they were going to make a crazy deep run. But this season they look so much more refined, and this season their DPS players are just so much more standout, and everyone's just playing really well, and you can tell how well they're coached, or at least how well they're disciplined, because they always switch heroes. They don't care if they have ult. Like, they're just like, we know we need to go Reinhardt right now, and that's the game plan, and we're going with it. It doesn't, like, I don't care that I have Primal Rage, I don't care that I have Res, we're going to switch to Zenyatta. And it's like, it's smart play, and they're one of the few teams I think really, really sticks to it. I mean, I watched all the VODs, obviously, but it really did come down to, like, we're just going to switch to Reinhardt on the last point of these maps. We're going to hit shatters, and we're going to win. And, like, that was literally what happened, I think, on Numbani it happened, and it happened again on Route 66. And you could argue that Rogue could have won Oasis, and you could argue that maybe the triple support attack on Hanamura was a little crazy, but like, just the sheer fact of, like, we're going to go Reinhardt Roadhog here instead of Winston Tracer is a huge thing. Like, it's really simple, but it made the world of difference for them in those matches. And, like, that's just why they're so good right now.
Now, one thing that I think is just a quick follow-up here, you're saying Earthshatter was a big deal here. Let me just ask you, Earthshatter is on the chopping block to get nerfed. Do you think that's going to affect things going forward in that sort of situation?
I mean, I don't know what the word is. Like, you can play around Earthshatter, right? Like, it's not like, oh, we don't play around Earthshatter or whatever. It's just like, you have to eliminate the Reinhardt. I don't think in the times where he hit it, I don't think that the nerf would have really affected it. Like, I think at the end of Numbani, he hit both supports. I think at the end of Route 66, I don't even know that he really even needed to hit a big one. He just hit like a game closing one. It's just conceptually, like, there's not a lot of counters to it, right? It's like, either you kill the Reinhardt or you're not in the Earthshatter. There's nothing else if you're not running specific heroes. And I think it caught Rogue with their pants down like one or two times. Like, Wins and Unco both got shattered on Numbani, and then, like, you just lose from there. It's, I don't know. I don't think nerfs are going to change that. I think Reinhardt's always going to be a really good closer, just the way Zarya is always a really good closer.
Yeah.
The same way, like, Nanoblade's a really good closer. It's just, it is how the game is, and Rogue needed to adapt or maybe switch their own Reinhardt or something just to make sure that they weren't so vulnerable to it.
Yeah. Pure, what was your take on that match?
This is where, like, a player mentality is different than maybe like a caster mentality, in that they lost because they're not ready to, in my opinion, they lost because they're not ready to win yet. Meaning, even if they did, like, eke out these victories, it would still mean they're at the same level in my head, like in my head, where it's, okay, now they're running into teams who are really mechanically gifted compared to, or the teamwork is really sound compared to most North American teams. So when we play them in the tournament, I'm going into a situation, I see what's happening, I see what's unfolding, but our teamwork isn't there yet. So there's nothing I can do to help out my teammate who's getting mauled by a Diva and a Genji. It's just already over. So, I mean, they're running into teams that are really mechanically gifted, and this is going to make them much better. It's actually scary that they lost, in my opinion. The fact that they lost right now is better than them losing down the road. And obviously at Apex, you can't lose a lot of matches because you don't make it into the elimination portion of it. But I think that Rogue is the type of team that will look at this and get even stronger from this. There's all these types of situations in tournaments where you lose in the right time, than losing at the wrong time.
Yeah.
So
that said, I really, really still hate Apex's group format, because I think we're at a situation where Rogue, if they beat Lunatic High, there's going to be like a three-way tie where all the teams have two wins, but it comes down to, like, who won more maps. Exactly. And, like, Rogue actually can't lose 2 maps to Lunatic High, and, like, I really, really dislike that.
Well, I would say the biggest thing for Apex is that they're locked into having all the matches on TV. I mean, it would be nice if you had more games played, and perhaps it's just that I would say if there's a flaw in Apex is that not as many games getting played as perhaps there should be because you're locked in by the TV format, and it's also done over a really, really long period of time. I mean, it has its ups and downsides, but certainly that can make for some weirdness in the group.
I think they could still do different formats, even with the same number of matches played.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they could have mini brackets within each groups and things like that, right? Like GSL style. But I agree. I think I mean, they just happen to be in a group too that there's 3 strong teams in the group, and somebody is going to get screwed over. And unfortunately, the next team, or at least if Rogue loses the next one, they're going to get knocked out, right? It's interesting that you mentioned that though, Pure, that you think it's better for them to lose now than maybe eke out a victory. And I don't know. You think they would? You think they would trick them? You think they would like mentally be fooled into thinking that they're better than they are?
It's the way the group is set up and the fact that they can get sent home so quickly. They're definitely not doing mind games to that effect, but it's a really hard group. And statistically speaking, they were bound to lose to one of those teams. So I would say it's better to lose with your fate still in your hands than it is to lose and then just get washed out of the tournament just by maps or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thing that standed out? Like anything that you felt like, like just that right there. Like if Rogue just would have done this, it would have been a completely different outcome, and it would have been just overall much better for them.
I would say the biggest thing for Rogue that I'm a little bit suspect on, and hopefully they prove us wrong as time goes forward, because it would be good to see a Western team go deep in Apex, which of course Envy might be able to do it as well. But you take a look at where Rogue is right now. You look at Rogue's dominance in the Western side of things, and the North American tournaments have been going on, like the Overwatch Monthly Melee and others. A lot of their dominance came with basically running the same standard composition. And I just don't know if you can win Apex running just one thing the entire time at this point in 2017, where maybe you could get more mileage out of it before. But Korean teams are very adaptive. They have some of the very best coaching in the world in terms of taking a look at what teams are doing. I do think that Apex in general is kind of a make or break mode for Rogue, and showing, okay, well, you can run this particular dive really well. What else do you have in the tank to be a more versatile team and get through some of the curveballs that might be thrown at you?
I guess to that point, it's weird, right? Like Rogue's just been kind of winning, at least in the Western scene, with one composition, but they go over there and they lose. But you'll notice too that like their ults actually weren't even really that great in terms of like when they use them and like should they have used them, but they still win fights anyway because of just how much damage that team is able to do with like Unco Zen and Tracer or Sunon Tracer and stuff. It's like they win fights they're not supposed to. And I remember watching, it was like the end of Route 66. I think Soon got hooked or like deleted by a Roadhog, like 2 or 3 pushes in a row. And then suddenly, like, I think Unco and Wins ulted, and I was like, what is going on here? But then suddenly, the next fight, Soon doesn't die, and he gets like a 2K, and they win anyway, even though they just didn't have support ults. And like, that's what makes them really scary, is I think just like the carryability from all their players. I'm not sure how much it'll matter, how much you counter strat them, like, because there is an alternate universe where maybe they don't hit those crazy shatters, or maybe a Winston bubble blocks them and they could have like won games that way. Or maybe they even go to game 5 because they don't lose Oasis to like that crazy individual Winston play that like stall overtime. But KDP is like the best team over there, I think, right now. I don't think that anyone's really going to argue that.
Okay.
They lost Lunatic High, but Lunatic High like should have beaten them, or like they should have just 3-0 Lunatic High quickly.
Yeah, it was.
And then like
sweep, right?
There's like an alternate universe where that happens. So I think that they're on a different level right now. I think Rogue matches up way better against Lunatic High. So I do expect that to go in their favor. But I guess I agree with Brad too that it's like way better to lose early than to lose late. But
the interesting thing for me and Lunatic High going forward, and this is really recent in my mind because Hex and I are going back and we're really recasting everything in Apex to get an even more in-depth understanding of it, because there's like such a difference between watching a VOD and actually just recasting it in terms of your engagement. But we were actually reviewing the old Lunatic High KDP VOD just yesterday, and it was just interesting the insights that you really get from looking at. The number one thing for me is just what makes Kongdu Panthera scary is that what their DPS do, in particular what you see from Rascal, is just, it's horrifying. how good he is. And yeah, even though you can make the argument that the tank support core of Lunatic High is better or just more well-tuned at points, the DPS potential coming out of Kongju Panthera is just outright scary at times.
Okay, well, that's going to be a big matchup. I forget what day that's going to be, but definitely tune in OGN Global to check that out. This morning, there was a pretty epic game, too, if you guys didn't catch it, between Envy and Meta Athena. We're not going to talk about it, given that I think I might have been the only person that watched it, but definitely go and watch it, guys. It was, it was definitely something that I think most of the competitive community is talking about, especially on Reddit, and we'll talk about it next week once everybody takes a look at it. Last bit of news is non-esports related. I figured we would talk just a little bit. Season ends for this current Overwatch season, competitive season, on the 29th. So try to get all your matches in, kind of get your highest ranking if you can. And there was a cool infographic that was released of just Uprising that I thought was pretty cool. Had some interesting stats, or just kind of fun stats.
0.6.
0.6, what?
That's my favorite number. That was the percentage of times that a person went into Legendary and won. 0.6%.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Let me see that. They had a breakdown of these things, right? Average win rates and highest win rate of Legendary only too. That's crazy. You guys finished the standard Legendary one, right? With Uprising?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so anyways, check this out. It's over on the playoverwatch.com site, and you can check it out. All right, we've got a couple questions for Q&A here, but before we do, I want to give a quick shout out to all the folks that listen to the overview via iTunes or Google Podcasts or SoundCloud. A lot of people don't know that this podcast is available there. So one way you can help us out is by, if you enjoy the podcast, go and leaving us a 5-star rating, because it helps when folks are trying to look for Overwatch podcasts. They can find us a lot easier when it comes to the SEO there. But I do want to give a shout out to the last one that we got from Newbie. You left a nice message as well as a 5-star review. Thank you so much for doing that, guys. And want to go into Q&A now. So we've got a question from Mark M. He asks, with OWL coming up and all these sponsors dropping their teams, won't this open up the ability for a very rich AAA league situation in tournaments? OW sounds like it's going to be starting with minimal teams. Once it begins, do you see other tournaments coming online, like OMM returning, or will that not be allowed by Blizzard? So this kind of is a little bit different than what we talked about earlier, but I guess once OWL is in full swing, do you guys see, I mean, maybe Brad, you alluded that there's going to be other tournaments that are going to be very strong storylines too, and it won't be only OWL going on in terms of the pro Overwatch scene. But do you see any kind of developmental league type of thing, popping up, or maybe some of the tournaments that we know of right now will become like more of those development grounds?
When you say AAA, you mean right below like premier level? What does AAA mean?
AAA is like minor leagues, like
it's the highest level of minor league baseball is the example that
I wasn't sure what. I don't know the timetable. I just know that on the meetings that some of the pros have had with Blizzard, that there are plans for there to be an array of different skill levels of leagues. I don't know what will actually get rolled out, or when it will get rolled out, or how it will get rolled out, but all the information that I have gotten is that Blizzard is absolutely doing what they should be doing. Long time ago on my stream, I said like they should absolutely have like 5 different tiers of competition that are internally taken care of at Blizzard, that are all have prize pools and allow players who are platinum level to have some type of organized competition all the way up to the premier level. Mm-hmm. And hopefully that would just foster competition and the growth of OWL and the amount of cities that are involved. Mm-hmm. So I don't know all the different tournaments, but
okay, I mean, that's good
from
to
what
know.
I do know, it's supposed to be getting pumped up a little bit.
So I had this conversation. I don't know. I had this conversation. I think it was at PAX, which was like, I think it was 2015 actually, right? Overwatch.
No, it was 2016. It was time flies at Overwatch.
No, it had to have been pre-beta.
Was I at the meeting that you're talking about?
Yeah, but wasn't that in the summer?
That
or
was
wasn't that like during closed beta?
That was during closed. That was last year,
in like
2016.
May.
Yeah, it was in like March of last year.
It was March. It was March.
Yeah, okay. It hasn't been 2 years. As much as
2015. Well, closed beta started in 2015, I think, right?
Yeah, closed beta started in late 2015, and then you go forward. PAX East is only in the early part of the year, so yeah,
it feels whatever. We're on with that. So.
Anyway, point is what? Okay, we don't care when it was.
I thought maybe it was like November, December timeframe, not March, but it's brought by 3 or 4 months. It's fine. They had this discussion. This was like when they were talking about like the scale of like what they were looking at. And I remember asking the question like, because they made a comparison to real sports, and I was like, you can't compare it to real sports because real sports, like kids go to elementary school, they play football and soccer and basketball. Like kids go to high school, they compete like basketball, soccer, all their sports. And I was like, is this like something that you're even like considering? And I think like it wasn't outside of the scope of like, it wasn't like a no. It was like it's definitely on our radar. So I would be interested to see how that works, or if they do decide to take it to that level, like how big they do plan on making this thing, because I think that there is definitely a driver somewhere to get like kids as young as 10 playing video games, like as a
high school Overwatch
profession.
League.
Yeah, like a high school Overwatch League, like a college Overwatch League, like similar to Tesla. Yeah. I think stuff like that is like a very legitimate idea, or even like travel teams. I mean, it sounds dumb in theory, but like it could be a thing. And I think that that's like a huge, like there's like a market there that hasn't really been explored for video games. I think,
especially college. There's a huge market in the college space that I feel like is still not tapped into.
The biggest thing I would just note there is just, if you go back to the original Overwatch League announcement video, the big emphasis on the video was that you had the Crusher 99 story, which has, of course, been memified into oblivion now. But the general idea was that people could play the game and then find a way of becoming a competitive player in the game and find a way into Overwatch League. And theoretically, you would need other things other than Overwatch League if that was to be a reality. You can't just have a closed door system. So who knows what, could be potentially done, I guess. There's a good way of putting it, but I wouldn't think that you're in some sort of doom and gloom situation. Like there's a lot of things that can be done to really be inclusive and get more players playing the game.
Yeah.
There's when we were at the boot camp in Cape Cod, there was actually an event called the Seacrest Smash where Splice held a Smash event, but then we actually had like Overwatch coaching sessions. We had like 20 probably kids between 9 years old. Kids like 7 years old up to like 25 coming in, and they were like 1v1ing with us. And there were like 4 or 5 kids who we played with, and we showed them how to play the game. They got better right in front of us, and they actually stuck around to watch us play in the Rival Kid Rumble groups, and we're just eye locked. The other thing I'll tell you is that my nephew and my niece, who come down to Florida like every other Christmas, they play consoles, they play mobile phones, all that types of stuff. But they know from my parents and my brother that I've been a gamer. And so whenever they like see me, they're like, hey, let me play that game. So like what I used to do when they would come down to Florida, I would put Team Fortress 2 on and just like limit the controls and be like, yeah, just go play heavy. And he would play heavy for like heavy weapons guy for like 2 hours. And then he'd be like, oh my God, that's the best thing I've ever done. And I think one of the issues is entry into PC, where in the past, you need like a $2,000 computer. But it's becoming more and more the case where these companies are making these cubes, these small little computers that you can carry around, which operate the game well enough, aren't that great for like a real pro or like someone who wants to do some like multimedia stuff. But with computers getting less and less expensive, and the possibility of there being like real world LAN centers where like you can go watch pros, or like you can start watching grim reality of whatever city it is, and you're like, oh my God, I want to be a McCree like him. There's, just like Matt was saying, it's interesting. If it clicks and if people respond well to it and it's well funded, you're off to the races. $20 million will be nothing. It'll be nothing compared to what's out there.
Absolutely.
I just have to say real quick is that how much do you hate your family that you're not introducing them to the true church of the Scout, and instead you're making them play
the heavy?
Treat your family better.
True.
All right. Let's see. Abood D asks, ZP, specific for you, said on Reddit that he will have a busy summer. If you can disclose anything about that, does that mean any upcoming tournaments or something else?
The most I can say is that everything is in flux about that. Like people ask about stuff like months and months in advance. Whatever might be coming up or what isn't coming up, can't say. But I'm excited about the summer. I will say that.
All right. Other than that, I think that's going to be it. We'll probably wrap up here. It's been a long show. It's been 2 hours, solid 2 hours. One thing, I guess, before we do some shout outs here, I just want to remind everybody that next week is the 1-year anniversary of Overwatch. We'll be doing obviously the overview before the actual day, which is on Wednesday, but pretty amazing, man. It's been a year. You guys were just talking about like the March, and you can confuse that it's been a year or when it was, but it's crazy that it's like a blink of an eye, and it's already been a year. Crazy.
It's been a long time, and the thing I was trying to get out there, but everyone was talking at the same time, is that especially when it comes to online esports, it really does feel like you're in some sort of like insane form of the hyperbolic time chamber, where what is a single month at times can feel like 3 to 4 months, or what is a year can feel like 5 years. It is pretty crazy how quickly things can change, where roles can change, and where people can find themselves in the span of a short 12 months. It is kind of nutty overall. So it's exciting though too, because there's a lot of opportunity going in. There's a lot of cool things that appear to be taking shape. So I gotta say that I'm bullish on the rest of 2017 and extremely bullish on where things go heading into 2018, when we're hopefully having the same conversation 1 year from today.
Bye, 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 bye.
Bye, bye, bye. Yeah, absolutely. That's what they're hoping for right now, is bye, 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 bye. Just to all the potential owners out there. But want to do some shout outs. Pure, awesome having you on. I mean, I think this was a fantastic episode, and getting your insight and perspective on everything has been great. We should have had you on a long time ago. This was blown opportunities having you on a bunch of times. But any shout outs you want to do? Where can people find you?
Shout outs, just check me out on Twitter, PYYYOUR. Besides that, I don't know, enjoy Apex going on. What else is going on, right? Are there any other tournaments? Ravelcade Rumble, OMM, check it out, watch it. Go harass ZP in the Twitch chat. That's all I really got to say.
We missed Ravelcade doing a LAN series. We didn't talk about that, but
Atlantic City.
Oh yeah, the Atlantic City thing. Yeah, well, we can talk about that next time. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't Overwatch specific. They said they might have plans to do Overwatch there, but it doesn't.
True.
Like, I mean, who knows what is actually where that's going, I guess. So I just feel like there's not enough info.
We'll keep it where it's going, Atlantic City is a very...
I know, Atlantic City is...
polarizing. It's a very polarizing
Well,
place.
I will say that Atlantic City is one of those things where I look at it as like Atlantic City. And I mean, Atlantic City, it has its upsides, I suppose.
Budget Vegas.
Yeah, I was going to avoid saying Budget Vegas, but yeah.
But it's got a beach. It's got a pretty good beach, but that's it.
All right. Flame, shout outs. Where can people find you?
I mean, shout out to my community. We tried, we lost the nominations, but we gave it our best. And I don't know. I guess that's all I have right now. Just everything's just kind of going right now. Like, it's been a year. Like, I only started streaming a year ago, and I had like an 11-month resub yesterday, and I was like, oh my god. Like,
I know.
It's
awesome.
Time's just going really fast right now, and it's a little overwhelming to me. It's in some ways, but I mean, there's still a lot more.
I mean, how big was your Discord a year ago?
Exactly, like 10 people. Now
10 people.
I'm like breaking like 10. I'm at like 3,300 or something, and it's kind of sick. But
yeah, thousands of people now. It's crazy.
With great power comes a lot of memes.
ZP, shout outs?
Shout outs. I mean, same as Flame. Thank you to everyone who supported me for World Cup. It didn't pan out, but thank you guys nonetheless. I think I said that last week because we had the results there anyways, but why not double down and say that again? Of course, shout outs to Flame and Pure for joining us on the show. Great insight as always. And yeah, like I said, excited for 2017. Thank you guys for tuning into the show, and you can follow me Twitter at TempoZP. And I'm pretty much sold out here. Sold out on sellouts.
And I'll wrap things up. Thank the three of you guys for doing this awesome show, and everybody else that's been watching this entire time. You can check out the VODs on youtube.com/ChanManV if you missed any of it, and I'll try to get that up as soon as possible. Everybody else that listens to the audio, again, you can find it on iTunes, on Google Podcasts, as well as SoundCloud. Just look for the overview, and I'll get those up tonight too. Now I'll have a special Streamer Showdown announcement that I'm going to be doing soon for Overwatch, so keep a lookout on that. It's going to be pretty hype, but until then, that's going to be it for the overview today. So for Pure, Flame, and ZP, and myself, ChanManV, we'll see you next week.
Later.